Hello and welcome to Europe and You in our new studio. As usual, we'll be bringing you a mix of UK stories from the European Parliament. Coming up this time.
The battle to beat Ebola. Could Europe offer a helping hand? Is the British candidate for European Commissioner, Lord Hill, up to the mark? And in the studio, always read the label, but does food labelling tell you what you want to know? High levels of air pollution are not being taken seriously enough, according to a Green MEP. The government's air quality forecast has been in the red over several parts of the country recently. When that happens, the official advice is to avoid exercise and even stay indoors. Ministers insist that the air is getting cleaner, but Green MEP Keith Taylor says too many people are dying from pollution. He wants to see measures put in place to get at the cause of the problem.
A good start would be low emission zones. A good start would be retrofitting the most environmentally damaging vehicles. We need to have a basket of measures from planning through to travel to work schemes, which actually increase cycling and non-polluting forms of transport.
It's a dreadful disease taking Africa by storm. The Ebola outbreak is causing concern around the world.
We continue to see an escalation of figures of infected persons and a rise in the number of lives lost to the disease.
It's thought the virus developed in bats and spread first to other animals and now to humans. The EU has already committed £120 million to help in disaster areas. Here, a number of British universities are working on a vaccine. Now several MEPs want to see researchers access EU science funding to speed up the process.
The world seems to have woken up, but if we just keep reacting and fighting fires, that won't be all we need. We need long-term research, and that means training scientists, that means kitting out the laboratories and doing that long-term science so that whatever is the next disease that comes along, we will be in a good position to fight it.
If our scientists want to get involved, they've got this idea, they can get involved in this partnership, and then this EU money will match fund the UK's own contribution.
What's really important is that we do not just react to the crisis at present, but we have a long-term plan. Now, critical to that is research and development.
More than 3,500 drivers caught speeding in the Thames Valley in the last year couldn't be prosecuted because the car they were driving was registered abroad. That's according to figures released following a Freedom of Information request. EU measures which allow police to trace motorists from abroad don't currently apply in the UK. But action can be taken against Brits who commit traffic offences elsewhere in the European Union. Labour MEP Annalisa Dodds is urging the UK to sign up to the scheme.
We've all got to learn the rules of the road when we go on holiday, and that should apply to people from the rest of the EU when they're in Britain as well. And of course there is the concern, as you say, that some people might think, well, I'll get away with this and just don't care.
Still to come.
Lord Hill is the UK's man in Europe, but does he meet the scrutiny of MEPs? And EU cash to get Northern Ireland moving.
Walk into any supermarket and the choices are staggering. Very often, whether it's carrots, tomato ketchup or roast chicken, there are at least two competing products of the same. So how do you decide which to buy? And following the horse meat scandal, can we trust what it is and where it comes from? To answer those questions, Finlo Costain from the campaign group Labelling Matters, and Moira Raymond from the National Farmers Union of England and Wales, if I get the full title. Good to see both of you. Thanks for joining me. To you first, Finlo. Many people go to the supermarket. They'll have a shopping list perhaps in hand. Is it then important, how important is it, the labels on food from a consumer point of view?
Well, look, I'm a dad. I'm a young dad. I've got a 2.5-year-old and I've got a 2.5-month baby as well. And when I go shopping in the supermarket, I really don't have an awful lot of time. Time is incredibly precious. I want to spend it doing other things other than shopping. And so the labels are incredibly important. Providing information simply is incredibly important. And the campaign that I represent on behalf of 4 big animal welfare organisations is particularly interested in animal welfare. And at the moment, it's incredibly difficult to differentiate higher welfare, and that's the sort of label that I'm particularly interested in.
Okay, and we'll pick up on that in a minute. I mean, Moira Graymond, we hear that the average consumer has perhaps 3 seconds in the supermarket, I think it is, to look at a label. So from a farmer's perspective, that's your marketing, isn't it? The label you get on the fruit and veg or meat. It's very important for farmers.
It's extremely important. You stated the abundance of food in the supermarket, and I'm extremely proud of the way that farmers in Britain actually produce that food. And again, when I would say to consumers that we as farmers produce to the highest possible standard, we have the red tractor, which denotes the highest possible standards of production there is, and with the Union Jack, that denotes Britishness. And again, when we do surveys at the National Farmers Union of consumers, they are looking for that origin of label. The origin of that food is so important, along with the standards they produce. And again, I would say to our consumers, look out for that red tractor logo. That's so important.
So that's one thing consumers can look out for. But Finlo, do you think that consumers have enough information to work through, given a lot of them, like yourself, very busy when you're going to the supermarket, other things to do? Is there too much information? Is there not enough? What's your view generally on the way labels work?
It's an interesting balance, isn't it? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. There is a lot of information, and what consumers really need in that 3 seconds that you mentioned, which frankly, if I'm spending 3 seconds, that's a long time in the supermarket. What I'm looking for are very clear and quick signposts. And Moira mentioned the red tractor. Red tractor is very important in denoting particular things. Country of origin labelling, of course, is coming in, is changing within the European Union next year. That will tell us where the animals have come from. What I and the consumers, the 10 million consumers around Europe that my campaign represents, want to know is also how these animals have been produced as well. This isn't a new idea. The European Union introduced method of production labelling of eggs, whether it was eggs from caged hens, barn-reared eggs, free-range or organic.
So how would that work with meat?
What we're looking for is to see that kind of system, a mandatory point-of-sale system, easy to compare, easy and straightforward for consumers at point of sale on all products, but starting with poultry meat, because reserved terms for higher welfare poultry meat already exist within the European Union. We'd like to see those become mandatory so that intensively produced poultry meat is labelled as well as free range, as well as extensive indoor, as well as organic.
Okay, Moira Graymond, what do you make of that as an idea? Is that something you'd support?
There is a tremendous choice for consumers out there, whether it's the red tractor label or consumers can purchase Freedom Foods, they can go to and purchase organic as well. Yeah. So that choice is there. We had argued at the National Farmers Union for many, many years for country of origin labelling. And
but this type of labelling where it would say how the meat had been produced, whether it was organic, whether it was free range, or whether it had been...
Well, those labels are there at the moment.
Well, they're not on meat, are they?
Country of origin is so important. That's coming into play next April. Mm-hmm. And again, that will denote where the country of origin of that animal has actually come from. We've been arguing that for many, many years.
Okay, but what about this idea of method of production? Not sure yet? You support it or you don't support it?
Well, we support the opportunity for customers to have a choice. So again, it's about clear labelling.
In light of the horse meat scandal, is there a need to reassure consumers, and might labelling differently, maybe this method of production labelling, for example, help?
Horsegate was a criminal, fraudulent activity, and the people involved should, in my opinion, be heavily penalised for what they did. The message to me from Horsegate is to the big retailers: shorten your supply chains, the consumers that we've spoken to since Hostgate want those shorter supply chains. It's country of origin. They want British product. So again, that red tractor with the Union Jack denotes that Britishness.
And
there were lessons learned.
Does that red tractor also represent to you kind of quality? Can you reassure consumers that British farming means quality, and that's what they're getting with the red tractor?
Most definitely, the standards within red tractor are the highest that you can find anywhere in the producing world. So again, it's getting that understanding, that recognition, and I say to retailers, I say to customers, look out for the red tractor. You can be guaranteed the Britishness, you can be guaranteed the quality, and you're being guaranteed the standard of production.
Does that give you some reassurance? You're obviously not going to meet exactly in the middle on this, but does it give you some reassurances that if the president of the National Farmers Union can say red tractor means quality meat?
What red tractor means is that legislation in the UK, legislation across the European Union, is assured that the standards there are at least at the level of legislation. Now, what I believe consumers want, and what surveys show that 8 out of 10 consumers across the European Union want, is to know also how that food has been produced. What a mandatory point of sale label like egg labelling does is to enable the consumer to identify that there's something that they don't necessarily agree with and prompt them to look for something more, which is why the British Egg Industry Council has not just recognised the importance of egg labelling, but asked for it to be extended to egg products as well as shell eggs.
Okay, and I'd like to move on slightly and pick up really on the horse meat scandal, which, because it had a huge effect on, and continues to have a very significant effect from a consumer point of view. One of the things that really annoyed people about the horse meat scandal was perhaps not so much that they were eating horse, but that they didn't know that, because on the tin it might say beef.
Look, I think this is where consumer desires and producer desires and commission desires kind of come together, because everybody wants transparency. Country of origin labelling is a really important step in the right direction of transparency, and hopefully it will help to cut that fraud in the marketplace. As I say, what I'm looking for is something more, is how the animal is produced as well as where it's produced.
Okay, Moira Grayman, if you have a label that says made in Britain, up till now that hasn't necessarily meant in all products that it was something that was produced in Britain from beginning to end, and that's confusing for consumers.
We at the National Farmers Union have argued for many, many years for country of origin labelling from birth to reared to slaughtered, and that again is so important. It's been in beef for a number of years. We're now having it in poultry, in pig meat, in lamb as of April next year. We'd like to go on a stage further. I'd like to see it in processed meats as well. And those are the sort of messages we want to sort of reassure our consumers. We again did a survey with our consumers only a few months ago, and safety, country of origin rated first and second in their importance, and then following on from that was animal welfare. And again, I'm extremely proud of the way that we produce food in the UK.
So you see then this kind of labelling that's coming into force, and it's European laws, as you say, that comes into force next year. Do you see that as crucial? What kind of difference would you see it as making for your farm?
It will help to reassure our customers, particularly those customers who wish to buy British. They expect those shorter supply chains when we have been hauling food around the world through 3 and 4 and 5 different destinations. That is not what our British consumers are looking for. So we have learnt lessons from Hostgate, and I just say to the major retailers, please shorten those supply chains. Give us, as farmers, a fair return. We will invest for the future and produce that high quality food produced in Britain, which you demand.
Okay, excellent. Different points of view, but good to hear from both of you. Thanks very much, both of you, for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jonathan Hill has faced a panel of MEPs in a 3-hour grilling.
I want to work for the common European interest, and I want my country to remain part of a union of 500 million people with shared values, who live together, who work together, who trade together, and who face global challenges together.
The former government minister was chosen as the British candidate for European Commissioner, and then given the finance brief by President Jean-Claude Juncker. Conservative colleague Ian Duncan believes Lord Hill will be a champion for Britain's financial industry.
We now have in place, I hope, a commissioner who can deliver because he understands what it means to the financial services industry in the United Kingdom, and that's a huge step forward.
This isn't a man that wants to strip away regulation. This isn't a man that wants to bring back regulations as David Cameron desires or powers back to the UK. This is a person who is pursuing the interests of the European Union and their agenda.
Belfast has taken an important step towards securing a new transport hub. The designers of King's Cross Station redevelopment in London are already on board. Now the EU has agreed to provide £2.8 million towards a study on how to make the project a reality. If it comes off, there'll be new shops, more platforms for trains to Dublin, the potential for other new destinations, and a slick interchange between train and bus. Announcing the funding in a visit to Brussels, Northern Ireland's Regional Development Minister says he believes the scheme will transform the heart of Belfast.
We are making progress on it, real progress, and the announcement today confirms that. I think there is now the very real possibility of this being created as an iconic building to facilitate public transport and assist the local economy in Northern Ireland, as well as assist in a socially deprived area.
Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. We're on Twitter and Facebook. You can also find videos on our website and via the European U app. So lots of ways to stay in touch over the latest UK stories in Europe. See you again soon. Goodbye.